The excavation site on Mars buzzed with activity, a chaotic symphony of drills, lasers, and excited chatter. Dust swirled under the weak gravity as researchers in bulky exosuits unearthed yet another fragment of ancient alien architecture buried beneath the red sands. For decades, humanity had scoured the Martian surface, uncovering remnants of civilizations that predated human history by millions of years. This site, however, was different. Dr. Alina Vasquez, the lead scientist, knelt beside a half-exposed crystalline object embedded in the ground. Her visor reflected the shard's faint glow, a pulsing light that seemed to respond to her presence. It wasn't like the dull artifacts they usually found, tools, tablets, or ceremonial relics. This shard was alive, its energy warping the air around it like heat waves on a summer road. "Careful," Elena warned her team as they carefully removed the surrounding soil. Her voice, tinged with awe, came through the comms. "It's emitting energy spikes across multiple spectrums. I've never seen anything like this." A technician handed her a scanner. The readout was a chaotic mess of data, quantum fluctuations, gravimetric distortions, and a faint signal that didn't match any known pattern. "Dr. Vasquez," came a voice from the command tent, interrupting her thoughts. "We're picking up anomalies in the local atmosphere. Whatever you found, it's affecting our instruments." Elena ignored the warning. She reached out cautiously, her gloved hand hovering inches above the shard. The crystalline surface shimmered like a mirage, and for a brief moment, she felt time slow. A wave of dizziness washed over her as fragmented images filled her mind. Fractured galaxies, titanic machines, and a vast expanse of stars collapsing into nothingness. "Alina," shouted her assistant, Ravi, pulling her back. "Are you okay?" She stumbled but nodded, her breathing shallow. "It showed me something. I don't know what, but this isn't just an artifact. This is a piece of something bigger, something powerful." The team extracted the shard and sealed it in a containment unit. As they carried it toward their transport, the air grew heavy, almost oppressive. Above them, Mars' pale sky darkened unnaturally. In the orbiting research vessel, Astraeus, the mood was electric. Engineers and scientists scrambled to analyze the shard, their excitement tempered by the odd phenomena it continued to cause. Power surges rippled through the station, and communication with Earth faltered. "Dr. Vasquez," said the station's AI, calmly but firmly, "the shard's energy is destabilizing local space-time. I recommend containment procedures immediately." Elena shook her head, her eyes fixed on the live feed of data. "Containment won't tell us what this is. We need answers." Suddenly, the shard pulsed, sending a shockwave through the lab. Equipment sparked and alarms blared. In the chaos, Elena caught a glimpse of something in the energy, a fleeting image of towering alien structures and symbols she couldn't comprehend. "What have we just unlocked?" she whispered, her voice trembling. As the shard settled, a faint signal emerged, encoded within the energy wave. Coordinates. To what? They didn't know, but it was clear humanity had stumbled upon a secret that others might kill to keep hidden. Aboard the orbiting research vessel Astraeus, the shard pulsed faintly in its containment unit, casting strange, dancing shadows across the walls of the lab. Dr. Alina Vasquez leaned over a console, her brow furrowed as she tried to decode the newly uncovered signal. The shard's coordinates pointed to a distant system in the Perseus arm, far beyond humanity's current reach. "It's not just a message," Elena murmured to herself. "It's a beacon." Her assistant Ravi, his face pale from the earlier incident, stood beside her. A beacon for what? Help? A warning? Before Elena could answer, the room dimmed, and the station's AA chimed in, its voice calm but urgent. "Dr. Vasquez, we're detecting an unauthorized approach. A stealth vessel has entered Martian orbit. It is broadcasting no identification." Elena exchanged a worried glance with Ravi. "Stealth? Whoa." The station's alarms blared, cutting her off. A jarring impact rocked the Astraeus, sending researchers tumbling to the floor. Emergency lights flickered, and the unmistakable sound of decompression hissed through the corridors. "They're boarding us," shouted a security officer through the comms. Elena's heart pounded as she turned to Ravi. "Get the shard. We can't let them take it." The pair sprinted toward the containment chamber, weaving through chaotic hallways filled with smoke and frightened crew members. Gunfire echoed from the station's lower decks, interspersed with strange, guttural clicks, sounds no human voice could produce. When they reached the lab, Elena froze. The containment chamber's reinforced door was bent inward, as though something had torn through it with inhuman strength. Inside, the shard floated midair, its glow now blindingly bright. 3 tall, insectoid figures with gleaming black exoskeletons stood around it, their clawed hands reaching out. "Elena!" Ravi pulled her back just as one of the creatures turned its angular head toward them. Its multifaceted eyes shimmered like oil on water, and it emitted a sharp, keening screech that sent Elena's nerves into overdrive. The alien surged forward with unnatural speed, its claws slicing through the air. Elena and Ravi dove for cover as the lab erupted in chaos. Sparks flew from shattered equipment, and the shard's energy pulsed erratically, sending shockwaves that knocked everyone to the floor. From behind an overturned console, Elena grabbed a discarded plasma cutter. She wasn't a soldier, but desperation made her bold. When the alien lunged again, she fired, the bright arc of energy searing through its chitinous armor. The creature shrieked and collapsed, twitching violently. "Ravi, the shard!" she yelled. Ravi scrambled to the containment unit, now mangled beyond repair. "It's reacting to them. We need to shut it down." "No," Elena shouted. "We need to protect it." More aliens poured into the lab, their movements unnervingly synchronized. But just as all seemed lost, the shard unleashed a massive energy wave, sending the creatures reeling. Elena seized the opportunity. "Grab it." Ravi snatched the shard, its energy flaring wildly in his hands. Together, they bolted from the lab, the pursuing aliens hot on their heels. As they reached the escape pods, Elena looked back at the chaos they were leaving behind. The shard pulsed in Ravi's arms, its energy growing stronger with every moment. "This isn't over," she whispered as the pod launched. Far behind them, aboard the Astraeus, the remaining aliens regrouped. One of them raised a communication device, emitting a sequence of sharp clicks and tones. The message was clear: the hunters had failed, but the chase had only begun. The escape pod streaked away from the Astraeus, plunging into the vast darkness of space. Inside, Elena clutched the shard, its pulsing glow illuminating the cramped interior. Ravi sat beside her, his breath ragged as he stared out the viewport at the carnage they had left behind. The research station was now little more than a broken shell, fires flickering against the Martian backdrop. "Do you think anyone else made it out?" Ravi asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena didn't answer immediately. She was focused on the shard, its pulses growing steadier, as if it were calming after the chaos. "I don't know," she said finally, "but right now, we have to make sure this doesn't fall into the wrong hands." The pod's navigation system beeped, snapping them out of their grim thoughts. A set of coordinates, distinct from the ones the shard had originally provided, had been uploaded. "Where did those come from?" Ravi asked, frowning. Elena's eyes narrowed. "The shard, it must have sent them. Maybe it knows where we need to go. Or maybe it's leading us into a trap," Ravi countered. Elena shook her head. "We don't have a choice. Wherever this thing wants us to go, we follow." The coordinates led to Odyssey, a cutting-edge exploration vessel stationed in a nearby orbit. With Earth's emergency protocols activated, it was humanity's last hope for salvaging the mission. The Odyssey was designed for long-range exploration, equipped with advanced weaponry, stealth systems, and an AI capable of managing interstellar journeys. Once aboard, the crew of the Odyssey, a mix of scientists, engineers, and military personnel, greeted them with skepticism and urgency. Captain Darius Cole, a seasoned officer with a reputation for pragmatism, wasted no time. "So this is what all the fuss is about?" he asked, staring at the shard resting on the briefing table. Its glow reflected off his sharp features. "It's more than that," Elena said. "This shard is just one piece of something larger. If the coordinates it's giving us are correct, there are more out there, and we need to find them before whoever those things were get to them first." Cole crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "And you think this thing can lead us to the others?" "I don't think," Elena replied. "I know, it's already led us this far." The captain's hesitation was brief. "Fine. We're burning daylight. Set a course for the coordinates. And Doctor," he leaned closer, lowering his voice, "if this thing puts my crew at risk, it's going out the airlock." Elena didn't flinch. "It's not just your crew at risk. It's all of us." The Odyssey launched into hyperspace, its engines roaring as it left the safety of Earth's orbit. Hours later, it dropped out near a vibrant, emerald-hued exoplanet, the shard's next destination. The planet's surface shimmered with bioluminescent forests, massive oceans, and towering crystalline spires. Sensors immediately flagged one of the spires as the source of an energy signature matching the shard. "Looks like we found our next piece," Ravi said, trying to sound optimistic. Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the glowing spires. "Let's just hope we're not too late." As the Odyssey descended, shadows moved among the alien structures below. The shard pulsed faster, almost as if it sensed danger. Unknown to the crew, their arrival had not gone unnoticed. The Odyssey hovered in low orbit over the vibrant exoplanet, its sleek hull glinting in the light of the nearby star. Below, the planet teemed with alien beauty, vast, glowing forests, cascading rivers of liquid crystal, and a network of towering spires that seemed almost alive. The energy readings from the largest spire were unmistakable. It housed the second shard. Elena Vasquez stood in the ship's observation deck, staring down at the alien world. Beside her, Ravi adjusted the straps of his exploration gear, his expression a mixture of awe and unease. "You think it's as welcoming as it looks?" he asked. Elena sighed. "If this mission has taught us anything, it's that beauty often hides danger. Stay sharp." Captain Darius Cole entered the room, his commanding presence immediately setting the tone. "Landing team, report to the shuttle bay. We're wheels up in 10 minutes." As the shuttle descended, turbulence rocked the craft. The planet's atmosphere shimmered with refracted light, distorting the landscape below like a heat mirage. Elena glanced at the readings on her console. "Gravitational anomalies," she muttered. "This entire planet is a physics nightmare." The shuttle touched down in a clearing near the base of the spire. The air was thick with a sweet, metallic tang, and strange, glowing flora pulsed rhythmically, as if in sync with the shard's energy. "Keep your eyes open," Cole ordered as the team disembarked. "This place feels too quiet." The entrance to the spire was massive, carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift under their gaze. As they approached, the shard in Elena's pack began to vibrate. Without warning, the patterns on the spire's surface lit up, and a low hum reverberated through the air. "It's reacting to the shard," Ravi said. The doors slid open with a deep, resonant groan, revealing a cavernous interior lined with crystalline walls that glowed faintly. The team ventured inside, their footsteps echoing eerily. At the center of the chamber, suspended in midair, was the second shard. It spun slowly, its glow pulsating in harmony with the shard they carried. "We found it," Elena whispered. Before they could approach, the ground trembled. From the shadows, biomechanical creatures emerged, sleek, quadrupedal constructs with razor-sharp limbs and glowing eyes. They moved like predators, circling the team with calculated precision. Defensive positions. Cole barked, drawing his plasma rifle. The creatures attacked in a blur of motion, The team fired back, the chamber erupting in flashes of light and deafening noise. One of the creatures lunged at Ravi, its claws raking the air inches from his face. Alina grabbed a nearby energy blade, swinging wildly and striking the construct's leg, sending it skittering back. "Grab the shard," Cole shouted. Alina sprinted toward the floating shard, dodging and weaving as the creatures closed in. Her hand closed around it, and a surge of energy coursed through her body. The creatures froze momentarily, as if stunned by the shard's power. "Now," Cole yelled. The team retreated, dragging their wounded back to the shuttle. As they launched, the spire began to collapse, the ground below splitting apart in violent quakes. Back aboard the Odyssey, Alina examined the two shards. Their energy signatures intertwined, revealing new patterns, new coordinates. But the cost of the discovery weighed heavily on her. One of their crew, a young engineer named Patel, had been mortally wounded in the fight. As the team gathered in the medbay, Alina felt the crushing weight of their loss. "These shards are more than tools," she said quietly. "They're part of something far greater, but every step closer costs us dearly." Cole placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'd better make it count." The new coordinates pointed to a war-torn planet deep in contested space. The stakes were higher than ever, and the Odyssey crew knew they were racing against time and forces far more dangerous than they could imagine. The Odyssey dropped out of hyperspace into a graveyard of ships. Wreckage from countless battles drifted silently in the void, their twisted forms silhouetted against the blood-red glow of a dying star. The new coordinates had brought them to Eridun V, a war-torn planet on the edge of contested space. The shard's energy pulsed ominously, as if warning them of the danger ahead. Captain Cole leaned forward in his chair on the bridge, his sharp eyes scanning the debris field. "This is a bad place for a picnic," he muttered. "Status report." "Scans show heavy radiation pockets from prior engagements," replied the ship's AI, Astra. "There are faint energy signatures consistent with active vessels, but they're cloaked." "Pirates?" Ravi asked from the observation deck. "Or worse," Alina added grimly. The shard's pulsations intensified, drawing their attention back to its console. Alina studied the data, her brow furrowed. "The signal is stronger than ever. The next piece is definitely down there, but it's not going to be easy to retrieve." Cole stood, his expression hard. "Shuttle teams won't survive in that mess. We'll need a stealth insertion. Astra, prep the cloaking drone for deployment. Alina, you're leading this one." Alina blinked in surprise. "You're trusting me to handle the retrieval alone." "You've got the connection to these shards," Cole replied, "and we can't risk a full team in hostile territory. Don't make me regret it." Within the hour, Alina was aboard the cloaked drop drone, descending through the turbulent atmosphere of Eridun V. From above, the planet was a hellscape. Its surface scarred by craters, its skies choked with ash and fire. Automated weapon systems periodically fired into the air, remnants of an ancient war still locked in an endless cycle of violence. The shard in her possession began to glow faintly, directing her toward a ruined city in the planet's northern hemisphere. Massive, shattered skyscrapers jutted out like skeletal remains, their surfaces scorched and broken. The drone landed quietly in a sheltered clearing, its cloaking systems masking it from detection. Alina stepped out, her exosuit humming with power as she activated its enhanced mobility. The shard led her through the ruins, its light intensifying with every step. She felt an inexplicable pull, as though the shard was guiding her not just physically but mentally. As she rounded a corner, she froze. A massive bipedal mech stood in the center of a dilapidated square, its cannon swiveling lazily. At its feet, the third shard glowed brightly, embedded in the ground like a beacon. Alina's stomach tightened. The mech wasn't dormant, it was scanning. The shard in her pack pulsed suddenly, and the mech snapped to attention, its sensors locking onto her. "Of course," she muttered. The mech opened fire, its railguns lighting up the square. Alina sprinted for cover, her exosuit enhancing her speed and reflexes. Her comms crackled as Ravi's voice came through. "Alina, what's happening?" "Just a welcoming committee," she panted, dodging a blast that obliterated a nearby column. "I need backup now." Before she could reach the shard, another figure entered the fray, a sleek alien fighter wielding advanced weaponry. It fired on the mech with precision, forcing it to turn its attention away from Alina. She didn't hesitate. Seizing the moment, she dove toward the shard, grasping it in both hands. Energy surged through her body as the third shard merged with the others, their combined glow creating a dazzling display. The alien fighter turned toward her, its helmeted face inscrutable. It raised a hand, signaling something Alina couldn't understand, before vanishing in a blur of light. As the mech recalibrated, Alina activated her exosuit's emergency jump jets, blasting herself back toward the drone. She barely made it inside as the mech's railgun obliterated the ground where she had been. The drone rocketed back toward the Odyssey. "Alina," Cole's voice came through the comms. "I've got it," she said, her voice trembling. "But I think someone, or something, is watching our every move." In orbit, the crew of the Odyssey braced themselves. As the third shard integrated with the others, a new signal emerged, one far more powerful than before. It wasn't just coordinates this time. It was a warning. The three shards floated in the containment field aboard the Odyssey, their combined glow illuminating the darkened lab. Alina and Ravi stood transfixed as the integrated shards projected a shimmering three-dimensional star map into the air. But this map was different. It didn't just show a location. It pulsed with an ominous rhythm, as though it were alive. This isn't just a map," Ravi said, his voice trembling. "It's some kind of message." Alina nodded, her brow furrowed. "The shards are communicating. But with who?" Captain Cole entered the lab, his sharp gaze fixed on the projection. "You tell me, Doctor." The moment this thing activated, every sensor on the ship lit up like a Christmas tree. "Whatever it's broadcasting, someone out there is hearing it." As if on cue, Astra, the ship's AI, interrupted. "Captain, we're detecting multiple warp signatures entering the system. Unknown vessels approaching at high speed." Cole's jaw tightened. "How many?" 14, Astra replied. "Their configurations match no known human designs. Estimated time to contact, 5 minutes." Ravi's face paled. "They must have tracked us through the shard signal." "Or they've been waiting for this moment," Alina said grimly. Cole turned to the crew. "Battle stations. Astra, activate the cloaking field and prepare for evasive maneuvers." "Alina, shut that thing down now." Alina hesitated, her mind racing. The shard's energy continued to pulse, their rhythm growing faster, almost frantic. She reached out to the controls, but as her fingers hovered over the deactivation switch, the projection shifted. A new image appeared, an alien figure tall and cloaked in shimmering light. Its features were obscured, but its presence was undeniable. The figure raised a hand, and a voice, deep, resonant, and echoing with layers of meaning, filled the room. "Humans," it said, "you have awakened the legacy of the Eternal Accord. The keys you hold are fragments of a power older than your species, a force that binds the fabric of existence itself." The voice grew darker. "But with this power comes responsibility and danger. You're not the only ones who seek it." The image shifted again, showing a fleet of massive warships bristling with weapons. Behind them loomed a colossal construct, its shape indistinct but radiating malevolence. "They are the Harbingers," the voice continued. "Destroyers of worlds, enslavers of civilizations. They have felt the shard's call and are coming to claim them. Your choices will determine the fate of your kind." The projection vanished and the shard's glow dimmed slightly. Silence hung heavy in the lab. Cole was the first to speak. "Astra, status on those incoming ships." "ETA 2 minutes." Their weapons are powered, and their trajectory suggests hostile intent. Alina looked at the shards, her mind racing. The message, it wasn't just a warning. It was a test. The shards are testing us, seeing if we're worthy of their power. Worthy or not, we won't survive if we don't act, Cole snapped. Ravi, get to engineering. Alina, secure those shards. Astra, prepare a counterstrike. As the ship jolted into motion, the first enemy vessel appeared on the horizon, its sleek alien design casting a menacing shadow. The Odyssey crew braced for battle, their resolve hardening. In the heart of the ship, Alina whispered to herself as the shards pulsed faintly in their containment. We're out of time. If we're going to win this, we need to figure out what these things really want, and fast. The Odyssey shook as enemy fire struck its shields, a sharp reminder of the dire situation unfolding outside. Captain Cole gripped the armrest of his chair, his eyes never leaving the command console. On the view screen, the approaching enemy fleet gleamed with deadly intent, their weapons powering up with ominous blue energy. Alina, Cole said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. What are the shards telling you? Alina stood in the center of the lab, her hands hovering over the glowing shards as their pulses grew more erratic. The projection from earlier, the warning from the alien figure, echoed in her mind. She had felt its weight, its challenge. But now there was no time to fully decipher its meaning. The harbingers were closing in. They're connected, she said, eyes narrowing. The shards are part of a larger system, a key to some ancient mechanism. I think the power they hold can manipulate space itself, bend reality, but we don't know how to unlock it completely. It's like a puzzle we haven't solved yet. Ravi's voice came over the comms. We're not going to get the chance to solve it if those ships break through our defenses. They're too strong. Cole shot Alina a piercing glance. What's the plan, Doc? Before she could respond, the ship shuddered violently. One of the Harbinger ships had fired a direct hit, breaching their outer hull. Sparks flew from the console, and alarms blared through the Odyssey. Shields at 40% and dropping, Astra reported. Hull integrity compromised in multiple sectors. We have approximately 5 minutes before breach. Alina's heart raced. She could feel the weight of the decision before her. She had to use the shards. If she didn't, they wouldn't survive the next few minutes. But could she control the power they held? Could humanity control it? Captain, she said, turning toward Cole, I think I can use the shards. If I can channel their energy, I can manipulate the battlefield, slow down their ships, even warp their fire. Cole's expression was grim. That sounds risky. I'm not suggesting we sit here and wait for them to destroy us, Alina snapped. I'll do it, but I need the ship's power core diverted to the lab. We'll have to use all our energy to make it work. Cole hesitated for only a moment. Then he gave the order. Astra, reroute power to the lab and focus on boosting shield regeneration. Alina, you have one shot at this. Don't fail. Alina nodded, her mind already focused. She stood before the 3 shards, their pulses in sync now, and closed her eyes. She reached out mentally, trying to establish a link, a conduit for the power that flowed through them. The energy surged like a living thing, crackling in the air, almost alive with purpose. As she concentrated, a soft hum filled the room. For a brief moment, the shards flickered. Then, a brilliant white-hot light exploded from them, enveloping Alina. The ship's systems roared to life as energy flowed through the Odyssey. The Harbinger ships outside seemed to stagger, their movements slowing, as if caught in an unseen force. The first volley of enemy fire dissipated mid-flight, fizzling out in a wave of distortion. Impossible! Ravi breathed, his voice full of awe. It's working. Alina's voice rang out, filled with equal parts triumph and terror. The shards, they're bending the fabric of space around us. Outside, the Harbinger ships were struggling, their weapons firing erratically as the energy field around them warped. The Odyssey slid in and out of sight, cloaked by the very power of the shards. Their fire seemed to lose direction, their trajectory miscalculating in the wake of the disturbance. But just as Elena thought she had a moment to breathe, the ship's alarms screamed once more. A massive Harbinger warship, larger than any they had encountered, had entered the system. Its presence was a force of nature, its sheer size dwarfed the other ships, and its weapons emitted a pulse that sent ripples through space itself. They're using a weapon to disrupt the shard's energy, Elena realized, panic rising in her chest. It's too powerful. If they hit us with that beam, we won't be able to maintain the field. She turned to the console, her fingers trembling as she adjusted the energy flow from the shards, trying to amplify their output. But it was a race against time. The Harbingers were coming, and their weapon was already charging. As the massive ship loomed ever closer, Elena made a choice. She would gamble everything on this last-ditch effort to save them. "Everyone, brace for impact," she said, her voice resolute. The Odyssey surged forward as Elena poured every last ounce of energy from the shards into the ship's systems. The walls of the lab flickered with violent, unpredictable energy. The 3 shards, now humming with intensity, seemed to pulse in time with Elena's heartbeat. Her mind felt as if it were being torn apart by the sheer force she was channeling, yet she didn't dare stop. There was no other choice. Outside the ship, the massive Harbinger warship loomed closer. Its weapon, an enormous energy cannon, began to charge, the massive barrel glowing with deadly potential. Elena could feel its pull, the dark weight of destruction that threatened to wipe them from existence. She closed her eyes, focusing on the shards, trying to use them to bend the laws of space itself. "I can't hold it much longer," Elena gasped. Sweat beaded on her forehead, her concentration slipping as the pressure mounted. Her fingers trembled on the controls, the power surging and crackling through the ship's systems. Energy overload in 5 seconds. Astra's voice cut through the rising tension, calm and analytical. "Prepare for destabilization." Elena's pulse quickened. The ship's core was on the brink of collapse, yet she pressed on, forcing the shards to cooperate, to weave together in a final, decisive act. "We need to break their focus, now," she shouted. At that moment, a high-pitched scream reverberated through the ship as the Harbinger's energy weapon fired. Time seemed to slow. A beam of raw destruction shot toward the Odyssey, its brilliant light threatening to incinerate them. And then, in the blink of an eye, the shards pulsed in unison, their combined power folding space around the ship. The beam from the Harbinger ship struck, but the Odyssey was no longer there. In an instant, the ship was warped out of its path, bending reality itself, the beam passing harmlessly through the void where they had just been. But the Harbinger wasn't finished. As the Odyssey reappeared, the warship unleashed a secondary volley, a pulse wave designed to destabilize any cloaking or energy manipulations. Elena's grip on the shards wavered, the strain too much. "Get ready to move," she shouted, barely holding onto her focus. The Odyssey shuddered violently, the pulse wave striking its shields with devastating force. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The ship's systems screamed in warning. The shards flickered erratically, their energies threatening to spiral out of control. And then, Elena made a choice. With one final surge of willpower, she collapsed the energy from all 3 shards into a single concentrated blast. The power was blinding, a white-hot wave of force that flooded the Odyssey, racing through its hull, its weapons, and its very core. "Brace," Cole barked, knowing what was coming. The blast shot forward, a beam of pure, unfiltered energy, punching through the Harbinger warship's defenses like paper. The ship reeled, its shields shattering under the intensity of the attack. For a moment, it seemed as if reality itself bent around the strike, space warping in the wake of the energy. The Harbinger warship buckled and groaned as its engine sputtered, and then exploded. The shockwave sent ripples through the surrounding fleet. The remaining Harbinger ships faltered, their attacks momentarily interrupted. The Odyssey had bought itself a brief moment of respite, but they were not out of danger yet. Elena staggered, feeling the aftermath of the intense energy flow. She could barely stand, her mind reeling from the strain. Is it over?" she whispered. Ravi, who had been monitoring the situation from engineering, spoke up. "We've crippled the warship. The rest of their fleet is retreating, but not before sending out a distress signal." Cole's voice was grim. "The Harbingers will be back, and next time they'll come in force." Elena nodded, her body aching from the mental and physical toll. "Then we'd better be ready." The shards had unlocked something greater than mere power. They had revealed a hidden truth. Humanity was no longer just a bystander in the galaxy. With the power of the shards, they had become a beacon, a force that would draw allies and enemies alike. And while their victory today had been hard-won, it was only the beginning. As the Odyssey limped back into deep space, the shards pulsed gently in their containment, the next stage of the journey already beginning to unfold. There were more pieces to be found, more secrets to uncover, and greater dangers to face. But one thing was certain: humanity would not bow to the forces of destruction. They would rise, and they would fight. And whatever awaited them in the stars, they would meet it head-on with the full might of their newfound power.